Welcome to Speak Out, Stand Out by Green Communications, where we're learning how to help our kids become better communicators. We believe our voices are the strongest asset we have, and our mission is to empower the next generation to use their voices to make a difference in the world around them. Whether you are a parent, an educator, or are just invested in today's youth, we hope this podcast will help you build confidence in our future, one voice at a time. Welcome back to Speak Out, Stand Out. I'm Elizabeth Green, and today's guest is Amy Joy. Amy is a teacher and single mom in Calgary, Canada, and happily autistic. I love that phrase. They have built a career on social emotional learning for children and demystifying the education system for parents, which we all need. You can find lots of information on Amy's website at buildstrongerrelationships.com, which we will, of course, link to. But Amy, first of all, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. I really appreciate it.
So, Amy, just quickly give us a quick little rundown of you and your expertise. And want to give everybody a heads up, today we're really diving into bullying and communication surrounding that. So a topic of conversation that everybody needs to know about. But Amy, how did you find yourself as an expert in this field?
As a teacher, let me go back a little bit more. As an autistic person growing up, I unfortunately experienced what a lot of autistic people experience, and I was bullied in school. And when an autistic person is bullied, there's kind of a double whammy because they have even less ability to advocate for themselves than neurotypicals do, because autism affects their ability to communicate. So, that was my personal experience. And then I grew up and went to school and became a teacher. So then I saw it from the classroom, like the teacher side of things. And having my two kiddos, I wanted to make sure that they didn't have the same experiences that I had as a child, and that I was seeing in my classrooms. I actually hooked up with a former U.S. military vet and bullying prevention expert, Dali Rivera. So Dali and I built this course together, and we've actually published a book together. Here, can I show you?
Absolutely.
I just published this book. I know this is supposed to be an auditory medium, so sorry about that. Confident Bully-Proof Kids. I will say the title of it, and there's a picture of children on it. We just published a book together, and we've made this course together. So I thought this was a really great opportunity to share some of these key communication points, so that parents will have confidence when approaching this topic with their kiddos.
Yes. Absolutely. And it's so needed. I feel like, of course, we never want our children to be bullied, and we never want our children to be a bully, but odds are they are going to experience it in some way, shape, or form, whether it's directed to them or not. They're going to see it, right? So I think it's such an important conversation to have, and we need to equip our kids so that they know how to handle it. So diving, right in, do you think that bullying is worse today than it was when we were growing up?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say it's different. And I would say it is definitely social media is the big difference. I would say in terms of interpersonal relationships, like two people physically in a space together, I would say there's more nuance for children now, that they understand more about each other and themselves than we did as kids. And I think a lot of that is the internet. So there's sort of like a good side and a bad side to it. I think a lot of kids, and when I say kids, I mean all children of all ages up to grade 12 and even young adults, really. They're all kids to me. So they've done a lot of introspection. They're exploring identities, and they have a lot more different thoughts about different things. So there's a lot more awareness that there are multiple different ways of being a human, and that there's no one right way to be a human, which I think was very much the case when we were younger. There was a one right thing to do, and then everyone tried to emulate that thing. So I see it as being like a lot more fractured now, where there's like a lot of different right ways to be, which is great. The downside, of course, of the internet is that it allows for bullying to happen 24/7, and people get sort of unrestricted access to each other. And that, like, the cyber community, it just never stops. And my concern is that kids often don't have the level of skill for dealing with that we would want when it's this persistent and this pervasive.
Right. Right. I mean, like you said, when we were kids, if we were experiencing a situation like bullying or just being uncomfortable in our surroundings, we had at the end of the day, the ability to go home and be away from it. And with social media, if the kids are on social media, there is no escape from it. So what do we do? How in the world do we bully proof our children, knowing it is not just at school, it is everywhere around them?
That's a really great question. And something I really want parents to understand too is we still have these sort of caveman brains. We have internets and we have computers and we have all the fancy tech and everything. But very much our brains are still these sort of caveman brains. And that's important to know, because that gives us, as parents, we know that humans are humans, and we know that our children are children. And so despite the pervasiveness of technology, and despite, I think a lot of times parents assume that children are these like tech geniuses where they know everything about technology, they still really need a lot of guidance. And they are looking to parents, they're looking to adults to guide them. I think my best advice, honestly, to parents is they're still children, regardless of whatever devices they have or fancy tech speak they use. They're still children, and they still need you to be their parent. So don't feel like you're, imposing or like you're making their life more difficult by being their parent. Just be there, and be their parent. They still very much need you as a parent.
And so when you say that, do you mean like open lines of communication with their access to social media and their text messages and things like that? Is that what you mean?
It can be that. I would say, I think the really important thing for parents is to know their kids as children. Who are they? What makes them tick? What's their jam? And the more we know on the positive level, the more we'll be able to access when stuff starts going wrong. In terms of like what to actually do with their device, I think that can be sort of situational, I feel like. What I want to tell parents is, if you give your kid a tablet with the internet, like thought experiment, right? They get a tablet with the internet for an hour. What are they going to do on that? And that's important for a parent to know, right? Are they using it for social media? Are they using it for gaming? Are they using it for looking up stuff that's interesting to them? What are they doing on the internet? And if you don't know the answer to that, then I would say start from a place of curiosity and find out what they like to do on the internet. And then once you know what they like to do, then find out where they like to get that information for that thing. Do they go on Twitch? Do they go on Discord? Do they go on YouTube? What are the platforms they use, and what are their understandings of those platforms? Like, what do they think they're for?
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So just being in the know, so we can make smart decisions and guided decisions based on really understanding them more rather than assuming.
Yeah. And even ask your kiddo, what do you like about this platform? Like, what are the advantages to you of this platform? And what do you think might be the harm that might come from this platform? What are your areas of concern? here. And having these conversations, having these really fluid conversations that don't end in like, you're grounded, I'm taking away all your tech. We want to have these conversations, and we want kids to know that we are here to listen. We're here to share, what we know. We still have a lot more life experience than they have, right? We might not know how to do the tech stuff, but we still have a lot more life experience than they have. And if, we want them to know they can come to us if they have a problem. I have had some really tough conversations with students because they haven't had parents at home they can talk to, or where they felt like they couldn't talk to their parents for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they've come to me asking me for advice about really tough stuff that's happening to them online. We want parents to be that person they can go to if they have a question. It might be a small question, it might be a big question, and we don't really know until we've opened up those lines of communication with curiosity.
Yeah. So what do we do? Is our kids online? Maybe they're on social media or whatever it is, or just text messages, right? And they're being bullied. And I don't know if we should separate the conversation between being online or being in person. You guide me on this. But as a parent, we know it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
What do we do?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell sort of a general piece of advice, and this can apply to in person and it can apply to online. Something we want our kiddos to understand is the passive, assertive, aggressive continuum. And that's a really important communication piece for ourselves as parents, as well as for our children with their peers as well. So passive means sort of trying to get your needs met in sort of coded language and not really saying what you want. It's like a protective way of engaging where I'm not really risking. If I don't get what I want, that's okay because I didn't really say what I want. So I didn't really risk it. And then assertive is saying what you want clearly and without any emotional, without any emotion, really. And in an emotionally neutral way, we can say. And then aggressive is saying your need and making the other people feel small, treating it as if it's the only way. So there's a ton of emotional weight behind an aggressive communication. And the reason I say this is useful for in-person as well as online is we can see these types of communication in both ways. So bullying, generally speaking, is unwanted aggressive behavior. So it's going to be on that aggressive side of things. So it's very useful for kids to understand what the difference is between assertive and aggressive, both in terms of other people's behavior toward them, to say, oh, wow, that person's really being very aggressive. They're using an aggressive word choice towards you in that message. Are you happy about that? How do you feel about that? You can use that as a springboard into that conversation. Wow, this seems like a pretty aggressive text. I'm not sure what's happening here. But then also, it's a great way for kids to be able to respond when a bullying incident does occur. So we want kids very much to land in that assertive place where they say, I don't like that. I don't want you to do that. Stop it. Those are all assertive communication. They feel, if you're used to being a bit more passive, like a lot of female socialized people have been, we're used to sort of saying, oh, well, I'm not sure about that. I don't really I don't know. I don't know about that. We're used to being on that passive side of things. So when we're used to that, assertive feels aggressive. But it's very important that we recalibrate ourselves so that assertive feels assertive and aggressive feels aggressive. And to say, hey, cut it out. That's too much. I always say it in class. I say, that's too much nonsense. Quit it. Cut it out. And just saying those things with power. We sit in our power. We are, we know who we are. We are confident in who we are. We sit in our power and we say, stop it. I don't like that. That's incredibly powerful, both in person and online. A lot of times, the people who are doing these bullying behaviors, they haven't run up against something like that. They just kind of are doing it. And then everyone just kind of like scatters, So it's actually incredibly powerful. And studies have shown that when a person, even if it's not the person that the behavior is being directed towards, when a person says, like, pushes back on it, it stops. Like, not all the time, but a majority of the time.
And such simple words. Stop it. Right? That's such a simple thing to like remember and to be able to say. But you're right. It's not what would come to my mind without you saying that. Right? It would be to react. Right? Like to react to something that's making you uncomfortable. And in this way, you're still reacting, but in an assertive and calm way. So.
We think because we see it on movies where they have these really like sophisticated or like dramatic reactions to like, oh, well, you may be so-and-so, but I'm da-da-da-da-da, where there's all these like really fancy like lines that are said about the, in the bullying situation. Just be like, stop it. I don't like that. That's not cool, and you can even practice with your kid, practice these phrases, these assertive phrases. We want to keep the attention focused on the actual behavior itself rather than on the person. So instead of saying, you're a bully, we're going to say, that's bullying behavior. That's bullying. Cut it out. Because we've all, we all show up as not our best selves sometimes. And it's important to recognize that that's a whole person as well. Even if they are making choices that are not healthy, that are not their best choices, we can recognize that that is a whole person, and we are speaking against their behavior and providing them with another pathway. That's helpful feedback for them.
Right. And so do you suggest that that this is addressed in the moment or later on, or brought to the attention of an adult first, or is it just right then when they're witnessing this to teach them to stand up for themselves or whoever, just with those simple words, stop it?
In the moment is ideal. And that would be if it's directed at you, or even if it's not directed at you. Especially if it's not being directed at you, you kind of have less skin in the game, so to speak. So it's very, like, it's valuable if you go, hey, that's not cool. We don't do that here. Just even saying stuff like that is going to kind of like stop the inertia of what's happening. It's going to stop. And then everyone just kind of takes a moment and just kind of goes, okay, wait, what's happening? Right. And that pause is sometimes all you need to like reset. And then to be like, hey, to the person that's the target, hey, do you want to go play, over here with me or whatever. Right. And so to like give it a different trajectory. If the child doesn't feel safe, then you don't need to put yourself in harm's way towards a person who is potentially, could be causing you physical harm. We don't encourage kids to like put themselves into harm's way. If you are concerned about physical well-being, your best bet, no matter where you are, is to go be near an adult. And that is for at school. So what I tell kids at school, find someone in a high-vis vest. Anyone. Most school districts will have the supervisors at recess time be in the high visibility vests. So like an orange or yellow vest with the bright, reflective stickers on them. Go find someone and go stand near them. You don't even need to talk to them. If you're afraid for your safety, go be near an adult. I've heard of incidents where people get beat up in public places. Go be near, ideally, an adult who is on the job. So who has to stay there because it's their job to be there? If you're in a mall, go into a store, go stand near, the clerk and say, hey, these people out there are threatening me. Can you call security while I, send a text to my mom or dad to pick me up? Be near an adult if you're afraid for your safety. You don't have to be a hero. You don't have to be a cowboy. You don't have to start, you're not going to take on like bullying single-handedly. We don't need that. If there is a concern for your safety, you're always going to prefer safety, and you're always going to go near an adult. I can't hear you. There.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. My dog is barking, so I had muted myself for a minute. The joys of working from home, right? So, okay, well, those tips make perfect sense. And again, they sound so simple, which I love because it's easy to remember simple, right? Yep. And easy for us to explain this to our children and give them tactical advice that they could, reach back to in the moment if they need it. What do you say to the parent who maybe has a kid who is exhibiting bullying behavior? How do you speak to your child if they are the one that's causing the issues?
Yep. And thank you so much for asking that question. I think a lot of people, stats show that up to 50% of parents report that their child has been bullied. But the number is nowhere near that when you ask parents, like, has your child acted as the bully, right? So there's a gap in the parents' awareness of what's happening.
Right.
I would say my top advice, if you are concerned that your child is acting as a bully, is to do something fun with them. Connect with them. I've had many, many conversations with parents where I say, hey, this is what I see of your kid in the classroom. Do you see this at home? That kind of thing. And they say, yeah, I'm concerned. Okay, well, so what are they like? What's fun for them? What brings them joy? And they kind of go, oh, I don't know. I'm not really sure. And I say, okay, well, what do you do with them? What do you do for fun? And it might seem sort of counterintuitive because it feels like we want to punish them or we want to put them on the right path, which we do want them to understand. And I don't often know that it's a lack of understanding. Sometimes it is. I think sometimes the bullying behavior is kind of the most proven method that they've tried to get what they want, which is often social cachet. So that's the tried and true method. I don't know that it's that they don't know the other options. It might be. It might be they don't really understand how to do them, or they don't feel comfortable with being vulnerable. So they kind of put all these, shields on. Right. But I would really say start with fun, start with joy, start with connection. Even if your sort of end goal is to sort of rehabilitate them, you need to start from a place of connection. If you're feeling disconnected from your kid and then you try to lecture them for, 30 minutes, that's not going to stick probably. So start from a place of connection, even if your goal is correction.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know that something that I've heard from many people too, regardless of the situation, if you need to talk to your kid about something important, right? Whether it's a behavior correction or something like that, and it's not in the moment, that in the car is always a great time to talk to them because they can't get away from you, right? They can't just walk off to their room. But I think also there's been a lot to say about the lack of eye contact makes them feel a little bit more vulnerable and able to speak out. I don't know if you've heard this or prescribed to that, but I have found that having difficult conversations in the car sometimes is easier.
And I would encourage, if you think your child is behaving in ways that are not the ideal socially, I would suggest to start with the conversation, something along the lines of, tell me how school is going. How's it going socially? How's it going with your friends? Tell me who your friends are. Even questions like, how do you know they're your friends? What do you do with your friends? What do you and your friends like to do? What do you get up to? The chances are there's other, sometimes people act alone, but often they're they find the other people who would be inclined to act that way, and then they all kind of like group together. So start from a place of, similar to how I said about the tablet, start from a place of curiosity, because you want to know, it doesn't really matter if it makes sense or not to you. You want to know what makes sense to them. Like, how does this make sense to them? Obviously, this behavior is making sense in some way because they keep doing it. So how is that, like, what's the sense in this? Help me understand what's happening here. Is it a dysregulation and you get over your head and you don't know how to deal with it, and so you just do this, you externalize it? Is it that you don't, like, there's sort of a core of unworthiness where you don't feel like people will really like you if they know who you really are, and so you just kind of put on this like cowboy facade? It's, what's the logic to them?
Yeah. And asking open-ended questions like you just gave examples of, right? That's the only way to find out, right? We can't assume to know how they're feeling or why they're acting in a certain way. I think these are excellent tips. Before we run out of time, do you have any other tips or take-home nuggets that we can dig into quickly to help support us as parents and our kids in this situation? Good.
For parents, my number one parent tip is take a bit of time and do some processing for yourself in terms of your own history with bullying from when you were in school. This is kind of where we started the conversation. And so it's kind of neat that we're coming back around to this. As a parent, we don't want our child to be responsible for our emotional well-being. And we don't want our conversations with our children to be more about us and more about our history and our trauma and potentially being triggered from an event from our childhood. So we want to be able to be present with our child for what is happening in the moment rather than dealing with all of the stuff that dredges up for us. So I'd really, really encourage parents to just take a moment and reflect and do a little bit of work beforehand on our own stuff, so that doesn't need to get in the way of us relating to our child.
That like speaks at home to me. We're going through an issue with my youngest. He's at a new school this year as he's aging, right? Getting older and struggling with that transition. And I did as well. And so it's been I've been trying to discuss with him and help him through it, but maybe leaning a little bit too much on my own experience. So that's really interesting. I'm glad you said that. All right. Well, Amy, any last words, any parting advice? And I know that you mentioned this course that you have. So tell us a little bit more about that, where we can get some more support if our children are going through, these situations or preventing these situations.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can, so I have the book, Confident Bully Proof Kids Workbook for Parents. And that has a lot of these exercises that I was talking about here. So if you're interested in doing some of those, it is a workbook because we want parents to be really active. We don't want it to just be a passive experience of reading. We want you to be really actively engaging with what's happening. So if you're interested in that, you can check out my website, buildingstrongerrelationships.com. And then we also have Confident Bully Proof Kids course on demand for parents, which will be launching by the time this is released, probably in September, back to school. So there is an on-demand course as well that you can take if you would prefer to have the information more in an audiovisual format. And those are the two resources that I would really recommend for you. We talk a lot about the parents' well-being as a way to support your child, talk about putting your own oxygen mask on first so that you can be there for your kiddo in the tough times.
If you are looking for more ways to build communication skills in your kids, grab our free mini lesson on how to craft a polished and professional speech out of thin air, along with 52 fun prompts so your kids can practice every single week. You can find that along with info about our upcoming public speaking and debate courses for kids at greencommunicationsedu.com.